Welcome to Story Players.
All right, go.
All right, welcome to Story Players, your video game time capsule, where we talk about questions and things related to games and the games industry. I'm Zach, and I'm joined by my friend Buddy. Buddy, do you want to say hi to the people? Your camera froze, and it shut off.
That.
That's okay.
Oh my god.
That's okay. We're back. We're in. We're still keeping it flowing. You're here. I'm here. We're good, man.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It may turn off again and again and again. I'll just keep clicking the button to turn it back on. I don't know what's going on.
That's cool.
But yes, thank you for the introduction and welcome all. Let's talk about some video games, baby.
Video games. All right. So I got a topic like almost right after our last episode, and I've been trying to think of a different thing to see if that occupied my brain space more. I don't know if this has happened to you actually, but like now the topic is just sort of like a worm in my brain, like the Mind Flayer worm in Baldur's Gate, where it's just sort of stuck there now, and I can't get it out until we talk about it. Is that happening?
Yeah, when I thought of mine for the first podcast anyway, like way back when we did the original test run, I thought about it immediately because I'm always wanting to talk about video games. And I just kept like iterating in my head for the rest of the week until we did the podcast. Okay. I was excited to talk about it.
That's what happened.
But yeah, tell me what your mind worm has been.
Okay, so my mind worm, the worm in my brain of an idea has been. I'm trying to think of why this came into my head. I don't initially remember, but basically it is video game names. Maybe was I thinking about Of Love and Eternity? I'm not sure. But I was thinking about video game names. And I was like, what makes a good video game name? What makes a bad one? And then I thought about like, all right, do I actually want to talk about the bad ones or the ones that I think are bad because I don't want to like dunk on anyone?
No, let's dunk on some games. There are some bad ones that need dunking on.
There are some bad ones.
Especially these days. Yeah.
And there's some that are like, I don't know. It's funny because it's such a vibe. It's a feeling, right? And I've been trying to quantify in my head why some games feel good, and I think it comes down to like it's descriptive in some way without being literal. It's evocative. So you can get an idea of what if your camera keeps cutting out, I'm just going to roll with it.
Just go. I just have to press a button. Keep going. Okay. Ignore it. I just have to press a button.
It's evocative in some way. So it gives you a sense of like the characters or the world or the type of game it is or the type of feeling that the developers are trying to evoke. And it's also something that, I don't know, can just like connect. If that makes sense. Like if it's so obscure that it means nothing, then I feel that there's a lot of weight on the game itself to create that connection with the player. The example that just popped up in my head I have no idea why is Noita. Do you know Noita? Noita. That like pixel. It's not really pixels.
It's like a wizard. Falling sands
like simulated, right? Like the simulated pixels with wizards. What does Noita mean, right? It doesn't mean anything. It's an abstract concept, but with the context of what the game looks and feels like, it's like, oh yeah, that's Noita, right? So something abstract that can still like resonate with the context of the game.
In the case of Noita specifically, because you brought it up, and I have complained about the title to myself, of course. I don't go on Twitter and complain about stuff like that because the game looks great and everything. So for those who have played it, probably Noita, they get over it and they just go with it. But for me, Noita doesn't feel good to think or say. And I just think of night, but feminine, right? Because it has an A at the end.
Yeah.
Like in Portuguese, anything with an A is a feminine
Okay.
word. They have gendered words. So noite is night in Portuguese and probably in other Latin languages and stuff. So I just think night, but
Lady
maybe
night.
another language it is feminine.
Yeah.
So sure, but saying noit just feels like you're using a funny accent to say night.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
noise.
totally. Like
Like that.
an offensive British accent. Noida,
Yeah.
like that.
Noida.
Yeah.
Australian or something.
Yeah, totally. So, I don't know. I've just been, and then like all these names of other games have just been like swirling around in my head. And then I fell down the rabbit hole of looking at there's naming agencies and like naming services where you can pay like hundreds of, well, depending on the level of service that you want. There's like some naming agencies that are kind of in the middle. So I was looking at this idea of like naming agencies, and there's like a whole universe out there just around naming products and businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like like in the games industry, there's definitely wins and losses there, right? Like some really strong names. I think I'm gonna kind of go through some tiers. Like strong names, I think Minecraft, right? Minecraft, you're literally mining and crafting things, and that is like that's not the entire game, but it creates enough of like, all right, this is sort of literally what you do, but also putting those things together is sort of
Mm-hmm.
abstract in its own way as well, because it's like, all right, well, I don't mine
Right.
or craft anything in real life like that. Like, I don't know, what does it look like to mine and craft, right? Undertale, I think, is another really good example. Like
Mm-hmm.
Undertale, you fall down into this underworld, and then it's the
It's
story
this
of what happens there. So it's the
of being under.
Undertale, right? Um,
I mean, I actually have a lot of input about this, even though
okay.
you might not think so.
No, this is great.
But coming up with names or just seeing names, especially nowadays, you see a lot of trend following, especially with mobile games. Like, of course, everything's click hero, tap hero, something blitz, or
League.
blitz something,
Yeah.
league, hero quest, whatever,
Hmm.
idol quest, idol hero, stuff like that. Like, obviously, just banking off of the idea that people like the word blitz, people like the word hero, people like the word quest and tap and whatever.
Hmm.
So that, I mean, obviously, like, that's not I don't classify those as good names. Like, they're successful because they're chasing trends and they're just being calculating. But it hurts other games. Like a genuine good game, indie game is Loop Hero.
Oh yeah,
But the
yeah.
name hurts it because you think you undervalue the game. You think it's just some mobile like cash grab shovelware thing.
Huh.
But it's genuinely a good game, and the title doesn't make sense for that game. Loop Hero, like, sure, you're the hero and you go through loops, like, it makes
Yeah.
sense. But the mistake is that they fell into that trendy, like, that same group of cash grab mobile apps in name. And I mean, names are like that. They're trendy, and you see trends like that. For example, you were just talking about hybrid names like Minecraft. I mean, I want to touch on this for Minecraft. I think World of Warcraft was really big at the time,
Hmm.
or StarCraft were both big at that time when the game was kind of getting momentum. And so Minecraft, I think, works in that respect as well. It's also a household name at this point
Yeah.
because the game is so popular. So, like, kind of arguing against that name itself is fruitless because it's like a Mickey Mouse. Like, that's a perfect name for that little mouse, right? Like, you can't pick better name for him.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway,
Because the
so
work is established, it's hard to separate the name
I
from the
think at this
work.
point we can't separate it. Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember back when I first heard about Minecraft, and it literally was just me. I thought, oh, it must be like World of Warcraft
Okay.
or something. Like,
Yeah.
it must be medieval dwarves and fantasy stuff. And then of course when I saw it, it's just cubes in a medieval fantasy setting. And yeah, hybrid names work. They work really well. I wanted to mention though, while we're on hybrid names, that I hate hybrid names nowadays.
Okay.
It's kind of the conjunction of these two things. It's the conjunction of the trend chaser, like Click Hero Blitz mobile app things, and the hybrid names, where we see things like Ravenfall, Towerfall,
Yeah, okay.
Firefall, stuff like that. Like, and even more so, like when they get creative with it. I hate seeing like I don't want to dunk on some of these things. I don't want to throw like blind fire because I don't know these games I'm
Yeah, yeah.
thinking of. Like I'm inventing these in my head, but I'm pretty sure some of these game names exist. I don't want anyone to catch a stray bullet, you know.
I get what you mean.
So that with that context, there's a game. I don't know, like hybrid names where you see straight through it. Like you see, oh,
I
you like the idea of witches, and you like the idea of the forest. So you named your game Witchwood, which
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
isn't one word. It's two words. Even if it was like a street name or a town name called Witchwood, it would be two words. But they make it a name to make it catchy. And Witchwood isn't bad, honestly. And Darkwood is one of my favorite games, of course.
Okay.
And so like
Darkwood.
not like saying those are particularly bad, but people do that where they're like, just like you said, I want a vibe and I want to send a message really quick. And so I'm going to take my vibe, which is space exploration, and I want to take my message, which is like end of the world. And so I come up with interstellar apocalypse. What it would be? It'd be like Stellapocalypse or something, right? Which,
End of
you know.
Stars.
And so when I see through it like that, that's what kind of bugs me with those hybrid names, especially when it's obviously going for a vibe, like Ravenwood or something.
Yeah.
Like you're just going for vibes there, like, and you're making up a word that I can't remember.
Dude, yes. I think Redfall is a really good example of that.
Oh,
Like,
Redfall. That's probably what I was trying to think of. Yeah. Oh, that's a
especially
perfect.
especially for you, right?
It
'Cause,
covers
like,
all those bases.
yeah, like Redfall is literally the name of the place that the game is happening. Like it's called Redfall,
Right.
but it's also a game about killing vampires. So the red's like blood
Mm-hmm.
and the fall's like
Blood red.
death. It's like
It's
like I
cool
get, I
on
get
like a
what they're going
level.
for, but it's like
Yeah.
it's like almost too on the
It's on the nose.
nose, you
It's
know,
on the nose. That's the problem.
without
Yeah.
being like creatively literal. Like it's only one layer abstracted to where it doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
abstract enough, but it's also not literal enough. And then you think
Yeah.
like, oh, is the name of the town called Redfall because you wanted to name a video game about killing vampires Redfall, right?
Yeah, man. That's such a funny thing in fiction where like, wait, fiction, right?
Well, I mean,
Fake things.
Redfall's not
Yeah.
based on reality, I don't think.
What is fiction? Fiction's real. Science fiction. Fake fiction,
Well, I mean,
right?
fiction's
It's fictional, so it's fiction.
sure.
Okay, so in fictional universes, it is funny when the name of the town is called like Murderville or something.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that is funny. And so like with that context as well, calling it Redfall.
I
I mean, it could be because it's in New England. Like fall, the trees are red and they turn.
But that's
orange
the thing,
and
like
stuff.
it could work, but it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess
We see through it.
Right, exactly. Like
Yeah.
Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
also a video game about vampires. But like the Masquerade, I haven't played it. I've only heard about that game. But
Yeah.
Bloodlines Masquerade adds kind of this like air of mystery to it. Bloodlines, it's like okay, blood and vampires, but like, oh, does
Well,
that
the problem
imply
with
lineage or something? You know?
Bloodlines is that it's a sequel to a series that had with a title with a colon in it. It was Vampire the Masquerade, right? It was Vampire
Right.
under
So you have two
title.
semicolons in the title
And so
now.
they're making a sequel to that specific game. They're not making a sequel to the game series Vampire or whatever. It's the Vampire the Masquerade. I think Vampire the Masquerade works like as a title. Then bolting on Bloodlines after that, then it starts getting convoluted
Yeah.
in the convoluted space, which is another problem that titles have, where they just go too far with the subtitles and stuff. Like speaking of Kyle Bosman, we were talking about Kyle Bosman before we started recording. He has a whole video, maybe not a whole video, but he talks about just that. He was talking about when you have an initial entry in a series that doesn't exist yet, like a new IP, and it has a subtitle already on it.
Yeah.
Like imagine if what's that game you're playing right now where you going on a planet?
Helldivers?
Helldivers, the big bug apocalypse, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
They didn't come out of the gate with a subtitle because it implies there's going to be a sequel with a different subtitle. Like that's a totally different issue. And when that sequel never comes, then it looks funny. And so yeah, and then it adds to the awkwardness of Vampire Masquerade Bloodlines.
Right.
Like having a subtitle, then also having a subtitle.
Right. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines Blood Lineage.
Yeah.
2.
Blood Lineage 2. Yeah.
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 I feel
that's another
that.
pitfall. There's a lot of these pitfalls for sure. It's very specific.
It is super interesting because like I just thought about God of War Ragnarok, right? And this is a super actually yeah, okay, I really like that I thought of this because God of War Ragnarok is the sequel to God of War, which is the sequel successor to the original God of War series,
Reboot.
which included the trilogy plus the PSP games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you had God of War 1, 2, 3, and then God of War like Ghosts of Sparta, and then there was one other Chains of something, Oath of Olympus or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this like series of 5 games, and then you're reinventing the genre. So kind of like what these other series are doing now, they're going back using the original name as like, no, this is the reboot of the franchise.
Yeah,
and then you're adding a subtitle after that. But I think they've actually succeeded in this because the games are kind of branching off their own direction. So even if there were a sequel to God of War Ragnarok, I don't think they would call it God of War Ragnarok 2. It might be like, I don't know, maybe Kratos goes to Valhalla and he has, well, I guess he did. Whatever, right? Like, say he goes to Valhalla. Yeah. Like, you could call it God of War Valhalla. And it doesn't have to necessarily be Ragnarok 2. It can be implied that it's a continuation of the series without having to be so explicit about it.
Yeah, with the reboot, like they reboot it in form and function. Like its story is different, the character is different, the setting's different, graphics are different, gameplay is different.
But
right?
they leverage the same name though. That's the thing, right?
Because it's that's the marketing of it. Like that's the property. It is still Kratos. It's still his story.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure maybe there's some hints to the older games I'm sure there's a lot of hints actually to him like slaying Zeus or whatever he did back then. So the context is still there for the old games, but it's in a reimagined universe and there's a new story altogether. And so it's basically if you didn't get into God of War and you're afraid of buying God of War 3 Chains of Olympus or whatever it was called, you can just buy God of War and be happy and satisfied that you've jumped on the bandwagon, like on the front of the train. Like you're right there. It doesn't feel like you're getting into a series that you have to research or anything. And I think that's like part of brand recognition and just brand marketability. And then going off and making Ragnarok just because they're framing the sequel as another new big jump in the story. Instead of making it a 2, kind of implying you have to buy 1 and now 2. And it's like a movie. Movies used to do that as well. It wasn't always like the sequel was named 2. It was the sequel named, or books as well, they do that. Like a book will have a subtitle instead of a number. Games really like numbers, but I think in other media it's more common to have these subtitles added to reframe things. And in the case of God of War, if the last one was called Ragnarok, is that what it was called? If it was successful, really successful, as far as marketing is concerned, they might as well have called the next one God of War Ragnarok 2. Like people were wondering if there was going to be a Skyrim 2, which I wouldn't discredit at all, because Skyrim was so successful.
But Skyrim was also
to make it again.
But Skyrim was the Elder Scrolls 5, right? It was the Elder Scrolls 5
most people,
Skyrim.
But they realized just how big the game got and how many new people started playing at that point. Skyrim is its own IP at this point.
Yeah,
like you could make a Skyrim 2 if you wanted to.
Fair point.
I think that's totally feasible. Like obviously people would know, like, oh, we know it's Elder Scrolls 6 really. It's Skyrim 2, but you know. And that's a whole other, because people do stuff like that. Like when they're localizing games, they do, like Final Fantasy. Is it Final Fantasy? I'm not sure now. It's some JRPG that like it came out 3 games in Japan already, and the third one gets localized, and it is known as the first one in the series in the United States.
They used to do that a lot with JRPGs, though. like
Or
the
like
Japanese
movies like
publishers.
Godzilla as well,
Yeah.
or Jackie Chan movies. Like a lot of those movies get renamed altogether, and so the title gets all funny like that.
Hmm.
So
Uh, when you were talking about that, it made me think of with Skyrim. It made me think of like The Last of Us, where the
mm.
sequel to The Last of Us was called The Last of Us Part 2, and they retroactively changed the name of the original game to The Last of Us Part
Oh
1
yeah, yeah. To make it a nice
because,
package.
yeah, they weren't going to call it The Last of Us Seattle or The Last of Us Wyoming, right?
No, I think
Like,
that's a good move actually, because I mean that's totally like The Last of Us is first of all already a great title on its own, and the guy Drucker, I don't know his name, something
Neil
Drucker,
Druckmann.
right? Neil Druckmann,
Hmm.
Drucker, get over here, Drucker. He loves series. He loves TV. You know, it's obvious he loves cinema and movies and stuff. The way he writes things, the way he produces stuff or directs things. And so going back and making Last of Us Part 1 retroactively gives you, when you have the full collection, because he's going to make a third one, you know, when you have 1, 2, and 3, and then of course remaster 1 and 2 again to match the quality of 3, you know, it's going to happen.
Ugh.
You'll finally, at the very end of everything, have a nice package on your shelf that's Last of Us Part 1, Last of Us Part 2, and Part 3. It'll be the Drucker collection, you know. And also, what was I going to say? I totally spaced out. I was going to say something about the renaming of the original one anyway.
Oh, okay.
But I totally spaced out.
like if there was a Skyrim Part 2, do you think they go back and call Skyrim Part 1 or something
Oh,
to that
yeah.
effect?
I don't think so. Oh, yeah. What I was going to mention is just the fact of these remakes, like remastering them again and again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of lends credence to splitting it up into parts. Like you have
So you
one
could
part of the
package it
puzzle.
up,
You need the
or
whole package.
okay.
They're going to package it. Yeah, they're going to package it up someday. And it's going to be like the Lucas film stuff where like they keep repackaging everything.
Yeah, it is super interesting how, I mean, maybe it's more apt in the triple A space than it is in indie to think about the marketability of a franchise of a game
Yeah.
within the initial title of the
Mm-hmm.
the first game in that IP, um, as opposed to making that a consideration down the line. Like Shovel Knight, right? Excellent name for that game. You're a knight and you have a shovel. Like perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but did they think Shovel Knight was gonna blow up? And like all the DLCs they've had have been like Shovel Knight semicolon whatever. But they're not going back and
Yeah.
calling it like Shovel Knight Part 1. I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a Shovel Knight sequel that'll be like a Shovel Knight 2, right? But that implies that
Right.
it's
No, I
literally
think
just the next Shovel Knight. It's not like going back and trying to package it all into this like big cohesive thing because they kind of already did that.
no. I think that's a luxury that AAA studios have. I think Neil Druckmann has the luxury of rebranding his previous IP because he's got so much recognition. People understand that Part 2 is named Part 2. People probably forgot that Last of Us didn't have a Part 1 in the beginning.
Right.
Just like we forgot that Star Wars, like,
Was
wasn't
part
the original Star Wars trilogy.
5 or 6
Yeah,
or
it wasn't. It
something.
didn't come out as Part 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out as just
It was like Star Wars and New Hope.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we just know them as Part 6.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's the older movie. So, yeah, they have, and that's Lucas and Disney and whatever. They have the power to go back and do whatever they want with
Yeah.
the titles. So I don't think an indie game is going to want to do something like that anyway. And I think Neil Druckmann's doing it with specifically Last of Us because he has that vision of maybe a third, fourth, fifth game, and they're all just going to be parts of a series. He's creating, you know, a universe there. We don't know how crazy he could get. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that they're making stuff up now. Like it's not part of the original story. And that reminds me of another thing is like when you first launch an IP, there's no certainty it's going to stick. Like
Right.
the Order 1886 or 1866, whatever it's called.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot about the order. Oof.
Like you could have easily had the Order 1887 after and whatever, or you could just have Order 1886 2 or something. But like that's an IP they launched. They weren't certain it was going to be a series, so it wasn't given a subtitle or anything. It was just like, and it unfortunately it just didn't work out for that, and so that game remains just The Last of Us or Order 1886.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's another risk you take, and that's like what makes some of them bad titles is because there's a preconception that it's gonna it's going to do well. If it has a subtitle, you're just expecting a sequel.
Okay.
Isn't that a little presumptuous?
Huh. Like, do you think they should have just called the Order 1886 the Order?
No, I think Order 1886 works because that is, like we said, it kind of describes where we're at.
Right, like the Victorian
we have a time
era
period.
kind of thing. Yeah.
We understand there's an order. Like, is it Illuminati? Like, we don't know what's going on there.
That is
honestly
kind of a good name for that game, actually.
No, honestly, I think that game has everything you need in a good like showpiece.
Yeah,
it's just the gameplay didn't stick with people, and probably the length of the game didn't work for people.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those like sad, ambitious games with a lot of aesthetic sensibilities that just got swept under the carpet because it's missing that little something that your average person is looking for in a game. Because I mean, if you look back at Order 1886, speaking of Last of Us in Order 1886, is it that even the name of it, 1886?
I think it's the Order 1886. Yeah. Wait, let me.
Those are similar games. I remembered it. Good. Those are similar concepts. Like we're talking about monster fighting in a cinematic kind of storytelling with cinematic sensibilities as far as the visuals of the game. Like very similar, but Last of Us hit it off because zombies are big, and the gameplay was all there, and it was a decently lengthed game, and the story was really great, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Order 1886, I think a lot of people who love the game still see a shortcoming in like perhaps the gameplay itself and the length of the game and maybe the way it ended, because I think the story ends in a way where you're like, there's gonna be a sequel, right? Maybe I never played it, but
I played it at E3, well. And that was the only time I played it. All right, I have a question for you. Have you heard of Immortals of Aveum?
Sounds familiar. Like I recently heard of it.
Okay, this was an EA published game through is Private Division their thing? It's like the EA Partners program thing, right? Mm-hmm. Where they'll publish larger indie titles. They published this game. It's called Immortals of Aveum. Basically, it's like
a pretty good name.
Okay, I disagree.
We'll go into
it.
But
all right, so Immortals of Aveum, you have your guns are like your hand, so you switch to like different spells, and you're like casting a machine gun spell, but it's like fast green energy bullets, whatever, and you're shooting aliens or something. I imagine that, I don't know, the Immortals implies like gods or something, and Aveum is maybe the place where this all happens.
Yeah. I picture like a heavenly cage, like a bird cage in heaven where like gods live.
Yeah, okay.
Because an aviary is like where birds are. Right?
Okay. I don't know how much birds there were, but
Avium is a bird thing, right? Or like airplanes, I don't know.
The game did not perform well. And a lot of the critique was around the gameplay and whatever. But I do wonder, do you think if Immortals of Aveum had a more impactful name, that it would have performed better?
I see where the name might have been unimpactful because Marvel just launched a big flop called Immortals.
Right.
And I think maybe calling a game, especially like under the EA umbrella, you kind of expect it to be trendy. So I feel like maybe they're going off of that, like Marvel. They're drifting off of that.
The Marvelization of video game naming.
I think even of video games in general, Marvelization of them. So thinking of a game called Immortals, you kind of picture like, oh, is it a Marvel thing? Let's check it out. Immortals of Avium.
Does that definitely has a stoke a fire in you to check it out at all?
It's cool. It's breezy. It definitely like is something. But yeah, it falls into that pitfall of invented words, like sci-fi words or fantasy words. Like a lot of people fall off of fantasy because the names of towns and the names of people just totally roll over their smooth brain.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't leave an impact because it's like they're just making up sounds. And Avium, while to me it rings like birds and sky and flying and stuff like that, or like a place where there's things flying. For an average person, they might not know what Avium is. Maybe they're thinking of aviators. And they're just like, I don't know. Like
gods wearing sunglasses?
For me, like, obviously, I vaguely remembered hearing the title. So obviously it's not doing so well.
Yeah.
The name itself. But I do believe a badass name can save a game. Like, there must be examples of games that, like, the name kind of supersedes the game itself,
Huh.
I wish I could think of a good example because I'm sure it exists.
Now you got
I don't have
me
anything,
thinking about it. Oh man.
I don't have anything loaded. Like, what are some bad games but have good names? That's a good one, right? Like,
Bad
what's a bad
games
game?
with good names.
I used to play a game called Cuisine Royale,
Okay.
and it was very like going off of the whole battle royale thing. But Cuisine Royale, it's like food fight. It's essentially like saying food fight, but in synonyms, right? So I thought it was good. Game doesn't do very well. It's still on, I think. I think you can still play it. But Cuisine Royale was a name, I think, that got hashtagged and passed around and stuff because it's quirky, right? Like, it's basically like saying food fight in a cool way.
Yeah.
Or in a funny way. And it is. It's all food based, like combat. Or not. The combat is actually actual guns, but everything, like your armor is a colander and other kitchen products, like a pan and stuff. And it had a little edge to it with the food thing. There's a theme there. But I think that the ludicrousness of it is what kind of made that game, like, it sent it forward a little bit.
Okay.
Because it became kind of a little flash in the pan type thing. And but I mean, Cuisine Royale is also not. I argue that that's a good title because cuisine is a hard word to spell, and some people they can't say it.
Yes.
And so I don't know if that was helping it or hurting it. But for me, that was like, oh, Cuisine Royale, that's fun. Like, I'll check that out. Just as a goofy thing. But
Okay, I can't think of a. I'm looking
it's hard
through
to
my
think of
Steam
flops,
library.
right?
Yeah, I'm trying to I try not to play bad games that often, so it's
No,
hard.
that's the problem. Is they get lost to the ether. I'm sure there's games that I'm just spacing on that are like unfortunately died.
I do have a good game with a bad name, in my opinion, though. Do you know Frostpunk?
Yeah, Frostpunk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Frostpunk is a dope game. Like
Yeah.
it's the end of the world. It's basically like snow Snowpiercer. It's basically like Snowpiercer if you weren't on a train, right? Like it's the
You're
last
on a city
bastion
thing.
of humanity. It's a city,
I've seen it.
and
Yeah.
you have to make
Yeah.
like extremely challenging decisions, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
like the punk does not to me evoke what that you have to choose whether or not you're going to amputate your entire like anyone that's injured or has
That's so
frostbite or
punk
whatever.
rock. That's so punk
Yeah,
rock. You never chopped your buddy's leg off when he got
right.
gangrene.
I mean, like I guess that's punk, but
No,
I
I
don't
think the
know.
punk in that game comes from the setting of the
Like the
world. It's a punk.
steampunkish, but
It's
it's
a
not
steampunk
even
world,
that's.
isn't it?
I mean, yeah, but it's not
But
like.
there's punk. There's punk everything. Like for me, I'm used to hearing different genres of punk. Like we have cyberpunk, we have steampunk, but then there's like lamplight punk or something, which is like Victorian punk era stuff. Or what is it called? Like
Yeah,
fire
okay.
lamp or
Yeah, that
something like
makes
that.
sense.
Lantern punk. I can't remember what it's called.
I didn't know that was.
And then there's like
Yeah.
there's punk for everything, So for me, it didn't really faze me that much, but it is another hybrid one. I'm not saying there's a rule against hybrid names. Honestly, for me, Frostpunk worked fine. I never played the game.
It
though,
worked
so it
fine
didn't
for me
work that
too,
good.
but I look at it and I'm like, I don't know. This could probably be something else. Halo. Oh, you know what? Halo Infinite is maybe another one.
That's a
But
tough one. Yeah.
I think that's mostly because of the context of the game. Because like
I
it
mean,
was intended to be a 10-year project that was
yeah,
kind of dead
and
on
didn't
arrival.
do so well, huh?
Yeah,
But that had Halo in it. It doesn't matter what they're going
that's
to call
true.
the
That's true.
subtitle, right?
Huh.
But Infinite, I don't know. It's all very subjective.
I don't like the infiniteification of games these days.
There's a lot of stuff called Infinite,
Yeah,
right?
or plus,
And movies.
or
That's like when
Premiere,
we used to
whatever.
call when people were naming things revengeance and revenge and vengeance and
the cringe.
like I feel like
yeah.
I feel like recently I saw a game like unabashedly with the subtitle vengeance or uprising or something like that.
If it's gonna be edgelordy, it has to be like ironically so. I think because if you're taking
It
yourself
depends on the
seriously
game.
with that, yeah.
There's some people that doesn't bother, like not everyone's as cued in, so like it could be totally earnest and people are just like, yeah, cool.
For
Oh,
sure.
the revenge of it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Well,
But,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was actually reminded as well. Another thing that you don't see as much anymore is like novel titled games or novel titled things. Like novels, like for example, series of unfortunate events. Like that's a title of something. Or
Professor Layton's kind of did that. The Professor Layton series.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's got like kind of a novelization novella like feel to it.
Yeah.
And I think for a while people were doing stuff like that, like especially indies. They're giving their games really long titles.
Mm-hmm.
Like a recent example, it's not an indie, it's not a game, but a recent example is the new Hunger Games. Its subtitle is very like
What's the
ode
subtitle?
to. It's called Of Songbirds and Snakes. It's an ode to songbirds and snakes.
The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. What's
Yeah.
That's 9 words.
But that's another trend that you don't see anymore in games. There used to be a lot of indies like with those long names, and I like more movies do it now. I think like Netflix things. There is what was that one? There's like a cowboy one. I suck that I don't have this information on the fly.
That's all right.
I hate that I don't have that. But yeah, like I see it more in movies. But it used to be a trend to the point where like when I was working on that Adventure Time game, I had one of those like drawn out long names planned for it, and it just got shot down.
Yeah. That's probably something I should have brought up earlier is like, how do you also consider the optimization of your name? Like,
Oh yeah,
is it
like
gonna hit
like ESO,
keywords? Yeah, SEO.
hashtagging,
Yeah.
SEO. Yeah,
totally.
Did I say CSO? Yes. SEO.
Yeah.
ESO is Elder Scrolls Online. SEO is search engine.
You got that gamer brain, man.
I got some kind of brain. I don't know if I can't remember titles or anything anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I was actually thinking that, like when we're talking about hybrid words, like a huge part of it is just hashtagability, right?
Yeah. Oh man.
Which kind of sucks.
I do feel like we
'Cause
could talk
we're
about this
missing-
for a while, but we've already been talking about it for a while, and I do want to get to your
yeah.
topic as well. I hate to put a hard stop on it, but I do want to be mindful. And maybe we could talk more about if anyone listening wants to talk more about video game names, then
Yeah, let us know down in the comments. What's a crappy name? What's a crappy title of a good game, and what's a good title of a bad game,
Yes.
and vice versa.
I am so curious to see if anyone else can come up with anything.
It sucks I couldn't think of anything because I'm sure there's some that I've scoffed at before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what's something we should talk about real quick though is the names of JRPGs because those suck.
Okay, Bravely Default. Oh, you know what? Octopath Traveler. Like
Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy.
Triangle Strategy is an objectively bad name.
Or just like
context of it makes sense, but the game looks so cool and it freaking killed it, right? Critically, commercially, they did great.
Yeah.
But yeah,
trend setting.
Bravely Default sucks.
Like a lot of games look like Triangle Strategy now, like the remasters they're doing.
Yeah, because the 2.5.
But I'm also thinking of, yeah, it's a cool style. I mean, I like it all right. It doesn't work for everything.
What about so Sea of Stars? That's a good name.
I love that title.
Yes.
Yeah, Sea of Stars is awesome because it's evocative and it represents space travel as well.
But it's like a Western JRPG. It's not like.
Oh, it is Sea of Stars. Sure. Oh, I'm thinking of Star Ocean.
Okay,
which is the same. Which is the same name. I love Star Ocean. I love Sea of Stars. I like both of them. Yeah. So yeah. Huh. What I don't like though, what I actually wanted to mention was like when they do subtitles or like when they make updates, like Kingdom Hearts.
Oh my gosh.
Or like Nier Automata. The updates all have like a million numbers in them and like weird
.hack
words.
Dude, .hack has the let's just look up a .hack. Or Guilty Gear. Guilty Gear has some really weird ones.
Yeah. They're imparsible as an American, like, because we got hybrid words. We're looking at one word titles for games, and Japanese are just like, yeah, throw some more R's in there and maybe a couple X's and
yes.
And make up a word and also add a bunch of numbers and a decimal, and that's the title.
Man,
what's a .hack? Give us one of the .hack ones.
There's a .hack that's called .hack. .hack / fragment, but the A has an umlaut on it.
Okay.
I could have sworn there were some crazier ones. Let's see. The Guilty Gear, because like Guilty Gear has Guilty Gear Strive. The Strive has a hyphen at the front and the back though. Let's
Hmm.
see.
They
Or what?
name their
Oh, you know
games
what? I
like
think I'm thinking of BlazBlue or BlazeBlue.
Blaze
Wait, no,
Blue.
no. Guilty
Japanese.
Gear XX Accent Core plus R. What
That's a great one.
does that even mean? Dude, they have one. There was a game that
You're
came
just
out in
getting done.
2010. It's called Pro Jumper. Guilty Gear Tangent. There's literally an
There's a
interrobang
question
at the
mark.
end of Tangent. It's
A
a
terabang. What is
it's
that?
a exclamation point and a question mark.
That's called a terabang.
Yeah. Wait, Blaze Blue. There's some weird ones here. I know we're kind of like diving off the deep end. Blaze Blue, Chrono
You're hooked.
Phantasma Extend.
And it's funny because how did the localization team not like look at that and just be like, we can't. Sorry. I know it's your brainchild, but we have to change it for the Americans.
Oh man, like I kind of respect it. Blaze Blue Revolution Reburning.
Mm-hmm.
Blaze Blue
Reburning.
Central Fiction Special Edition.
I love
Okay,
that.
I
I mean,
hate that
it makes
so
for some
much.
good comedy.
Oh my goodness.
It makes for some good Google searches, some good
Dude.
giggles, some good
It
giggle
does.
searches.
I do love the ridiculousness. Like if they really lean
Yeah.
into how just absurd some of the stuff is, I can respect that
And
a
the
great
thing is,
deal.
it's every game. Like it's a broad stroke.
Yes.
Like it's most JRPGs that come over here are like that.
Right. Like imagine if the
And
next
even
Elder Scrolls was called Elder Scrolls Mountain Kings and Wizard
Mountain
Caves.
Kings of Iriel Septum in the Fourth
Yeah,
Age,
exactly.
remastered.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, we're dumb, stupid Americans, and we like the hybrid words. It's only one word, and I can type it in all at once, and I don't have to press the space bar.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
Cool,
yeah,
man.
very
Well,
good fun.
video game names. That's a good time. All right.
It honestly is a great topic because there's a lot to it, and I think it's something that's it's very trendy and changes with the times and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good. I honestly feel like we could talk about it for more, but we may be boring people. So let's jump topics.
Yeah, we might have
now.
jumped that shark a while ago. So
No.
if people are still with us,
Yeah, between my camera bugging out and me blanking out and
A+
not knowing the names of games.
10 out of 10.
It's good to be clueless so we can ask the audience things though.
True.
And then
Well,
we
I
get
mean
some audience interaction.
that's part of what this whole thing is like we don't know everything.
Yeah. Even if they're like angrily correcting us, it's at least like, it gets us some traffic, some interaction.
It's all about the engagement, buddy.
The engagement. Yeah, the user engagement. All right. My topic it was pretty simple. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it.
All right.
Honestly, I just wanted to bring a game to the table that I've been playing, and
Ooh,
which is
nice.
rare because I don't play games anymore.
Okay.
I work all the time, and I feel guilty playing a game because I feel like I should just be working on my game.
Do you feel guilty
and all that stuff.
Strive, Chrono,
I feel
Phantasma?
guilty Gear Strive X #reburning. And yeah, so it's kind of an amazing thing that I found a game that I want to play, and that game is called. Speaking of bad titles,
Okay.
it's called Thronebreaker: The Witcher Tales. Have you heard of it?
I feel like I've heard of Thronebreaker. Oh wait, Thronebreaker's that's
the
the
card game.
Witcher mobile? Was it a mobile game?
No, it's a PC game too. I mean, it could be on mobile. Basically, it's a little bit funny to explain. It's essentially a spin-off of their card game called Gwent,
Okay.
which in and of itself is a spin-off of a meta card game within The Witcher 3.
Right.
So basically, okay, to summarize the game, it's set in the Witcher universe. It is an RPG, and the combat system or the puzzle-solving system is using the card system that they have for Gwent, that they've already made up for Gwent. And it's a great game for me because I want to play Gwent, but I don't want to play people because I get anxious. And people are mean online and everyone's better than me, and I get way inside my head about playing online with people. So it gives me that I can play the game, but I can still enjoy the card game because I love collectible card games in concept. I've really only ever played Gwent and Magic the Gathering. But in concept, I love the feel of cards, and I love digital card games because what they do, at least in Gwent, what they do with the format of cards is very interesting, and it's unique to digital card games. Like you can't play Gwent in physical form. It's impossible.
Okay.
Because the rules they depend on automation, and they depend on the computer to go in your deck and grab things, or go in your graveyard and grab things, or add values to things that are already in your deck hidden in there. You know, like do crazy stuff. So yeah, I honestly I really love Gwent as well, but I'm anxious to play it online. So this RPG is something I went to. I actually revisited it because I was thinking about buying it a while ago. But I revisited it again recently to buy it, and I got it for, like, when you join GOG for the first time, because I just made my GOG account, they give you like a handful of games to get on a discount. And so I bought it for $2, this RPG,
Okay. And
which is a great
CD
deal.
Projekt game, so I guess that kind of makes
It's
sense.
a CD Projekt game, yeah. And I think it was supposed, I mean, going back to the title, I think it was supposed to be of a series of Witcher tales. I think it was supposed to be Thronebreaker, a Witcher tale, and then they would come up with Ragnarok, a Witcher tale, or, you know, so on. But it didn't do very well, and Gwent itself didn't do very well after all. And so I think, and then CD Projekt Red kind of had a tough streak with their Cyberpunk. And I think they didn't get a lot of funding to continue on. I mean, Gwent went on for a long time. It's still going on. It's still going strong. You can still play it. It's just not like getting content updates and stuff anymore. There's a lot of content already in the game, so I don't know what people are complaining about. But anyway, yeah, I'm enjoying this game. It is a top-down RPG where you just play as a character. You walk around this really, really interesting and detailed two-dimensional map that has a lot of nuance to it. There's a lot of interactable things. Have you played The Witcher before? What's your familiarity with the series?
So I played The Witcher 3. I think I might have heard of The Witcher 2 around the time it existed, but I was one of those people that came into the whole thing with The Witcher 3 and the show.
I'm the same way.
Like, the whole thing getting popularity.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
But I did play through the Wild Hunt, and that was
nice,
freaking awesome. I played through the whole thing on Switch, dude, on a Switch Lite, which was the worst way to play it. But like, man, that game's incredible.
But to be honest, the engine they created, I think it's called the Red Engine that they developed for those games. I think it's the Red Engine for 2 and 3. So 3 is like the kind of the last evolution of the Red Engine. Oh no, I think they use the Red Engine for Cyberpunk. It's just like an evolution of that. Anyway, yeah, that's where I got on the series as well, the third game. And I think after playing it, it really hooked me because it reminded me of Magic the Gathering, what I liked about the world of Magic the Gathering, and it didn't have what I disliked about Magic the Gathering, which is like space travel and cyborgs and stuff. Okay. Like somehow Magic has knights, and like when I got into Magic, it was 7th edition, and Magic was like all knights in armor and magic and dark magic and cool stuff like that, and dragons and stuff, and interesting parts of the world and different cultures. And then like in the same kind of, within the same couple of years after that, you start seeing like spaceships, space travel, interdimensional beings, and like sci-fi things that I didn't really want in that game. So, you know, I avoided, I'm a superficial card game collector. I like built my deck based off of how the cards looked.
Okay.
That's how bad of a card game I am. Card game player I am. But the Witcher world, it totally has that, like all that stuff that I love, the medieval fantasy with magic and with some interesting hooks to it, but none of that like far out ridiculous stuff. Like, yeah, there's interdimensional travel on a high level, but I really love the grounded nature of The Witcher, and that's what really hooked me about the world. And so recently I've been delving into lore videos about like what this, because it has the book series backing it up too, which is something I only knew about because of The Witcher itself. And yeah, I don't know. What was your experience like playing through The Witcher 3? Like, what did you take away from that?
That's a good
like, are you
question.
a big fantasy guy? I don't know.
It depends. I actually was really not into Skyrim when it first came out. And I love Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is probably my favorite. Is Lord of the Rings high fantasy? Does that count? Well,
I think it is the high fantasy example. Yeah.
Yeah. I love Lord of the Rings. Like that whole story. I could rewatch. Mm-hmm. I'm one of the people that could rewatch the movies forever, right? I know there's a lot of people
like every fan of them.
Yeah, totally.
The yearly marathons of the whole extended edition.
I usually do. But not every high fantasy thing really grabs me. Mm-hmm. But there was enough of like you're from the East Coast. What's that? Like the Mothman, there's like that wolf thing that comes out at night. Like there's enough of that kind of
Mm.
fantastical, like backwoods swampiness where I'm like, this is weird and I don't really get to experience this in another medium because it's not accessible to me. So
Yeah, like
The
the.
Witcher's got like just a super you're like kind of sailing the high seas and there's these kingdoms and these like all these really uh detailed nuanced stories that are interconnected with one another
Hmm.
that I think play really well and serve the overall world because it makes it easier for you as a player, even if you don't really care about the setting or the themes, you
Hmm.
can buy into what's happening because it is all just
Yeah.
so like it's so full of life. Like all of the stories. I mean, when you were talking about this stuff, I thought of this quest where like it was a side quest. I think you have to go hunt down like three witches in these swamps because they're
Hmm.
terrorizing the people that live there or something.
The Crookback Bog
Yeah,
witches. Yeah.
yeah. And you have to do like very specific quests at specific times of day, I think, because that's when they
Oh,
come
I
out.
think there's an element of that.
Yeah, I can't recall exactly, but normally I wouldn't have cared about these witches, but like I do remember I don't remember exactly what the story was, but I remember the story being captivating to me because it was just like, okay, this
Hmm.
fits into like how the world kind of works and what a witcher is. What a witcher
Hmm.
is so cool because they're kind of like the anti-heroes of this world, but what they do is
Yeah.
so important and yet they're looked down upon as like borderline scum by a lot of people, and yet they're being
That's what.
sent out by kings on these extremely important missions. It's such a funny
Yeah,
idea
they're
to
they're
me.
looked at as like a necessary evil,
Yeah.
right?
Like everyone
Like a
hates
neutral
them, but they're
party
like,
that
ah, oh, the damn Witcher, can you go hunt
get
down
the
this
Witcher on the
ghost?
job.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's what separates, like for me that's what grabbed me when I first, basically I played The Witcher 3 first. I may have dabbled with Witcher 2, but I never beat it a long time ago. But Witcher 3 is really what like my first impression of the series was. And that was that grabbed me first was like you were walking around the town and people are spitting at you
yeah.
and like like you feel like
You're
abused.
not the savior of the world, you know?
Yeah,
It's really
and
cool.
as opposed to like high fantasy stories, like for example, the Elder Scrolls series is all about power fantasy and just like it's very much that romantic fantasy take. Like you don't see rape and murder, in the same lens as you do in The Witcher. Like you see people doing awful. You see humanity at its worst,
Yeah.
really. Whereas in like something like Elder Scrolls plays around with its story, but for like Lord of the Rings, you have these archetypal characters who like I mean, you could argue that the characters in Lord of the Rings, at least in the films, are like kind of two dimensional. Like no one ever does anything that you wouldn't expect them to do. The bad guys, they behave like bad guys. The good guys, they behave like good guys. The,
Right.
the fool behaves like a fool. Um,
Like
but in
Frodo
The
didn't
Witcher,
kill
like
Gollum, you know, and then he was like laughing over his dead corpse or anything like that.
no, it's all a mistake. He just
Yeah.
falls in by mistake or
Yeah.
whatever. But in The Witcher, and I think this is what a lot of people love about it, is it's very much like it's a political thriller as much as it is an opera. What do you call it? A soap opera, or it's like a series almost. Like there's the characters are so contextualized in this world, and it just feels so much more grounded and gritty, right? Obviously, it's the gritty fantasy,
Yeah.
and I think that's what really grabs a lot of people. And like it left an impression on me. I wouldn't say I liked it at first. What eventually got me to really warm up to it was just the character of Geralt. Like I loved seeing him kind of be a father figure,
Yeah.
and I connected with the story in that way. And then at that point, I was ready to just accept like this is a really cool the lore and the folklore inspirations that come in, like where these monsters are coming from, as far as like the relevance in real life folklore. Um, that's what really it got its hooks in me, and then I kind of stayed
Yeah.
immersed there. And at that point, the lore and stuff, the more I learn about it, the more interested I am in it. And it goes pretty deep, and it's pretty interesting. We were talking about lore just last time,
Yeah.
about the lore in
Oh,
Dishonored.
dude.
So,
Now I kind of want to read the books and also play
oh yeah.
Thronebreaker because I haven't been in the Witcher world since the pandemic or since the pandemic started. But yeah, I
Hmm.
think what I really liked about the world is that you're a small part of the bigger world,
Hmm.
and what you do has very limited influence. Like you can assassinate princes and stuff, and like that does have ramifications, but the
Mhm.
ramifications are just that things get fucked in one way instead of another way. You're not
Yeah, yeah. And
actually
it's
really
usually
making things better. You're just
and
changing
it's
them.
usually it is like a small scale, like a town will be burned down or
Right.
something. Like that's as big as it usually gets.
Well,
Obviously
there
the
is like
story of The
the
Witcher goes
war thing, and you can like kind of influence that. But even then, it's like
yeah.
the war is gonna have. You're not gonna stop the war, really. You
There's
know?
always a bigger thing going
Yeah.
on for sure. Like
Exactly.
there's always stuff bigger than you happening, and
And
that's how you feel in the world.
yeah, and your
And I think
motivation.
that's a good context.
I was gonna say like your motivation is to just rescue Siri and to like get her back in your
Right.
life. It has nothing to
Yeah.
do with like helping these people or saving them. You do that kind of as a symptom of you being a father figure to her
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
pursuing that.
And just needing money and needing to get by and
Yeah,
do your investigation.
yeah,
Like he's literally just a private investigator.
right. That
And
happens to be really good at killing stuff.
I liken him, like, obviously you can draw comparisons between him and Batman because of his voice. But I do see him as, like, Batman is quote unquote the world's greatest detective or whatever. But I see Geralt as more of a detective in the games. Like, maybe the detective elements of the gameplay aren't really super strong.
Yep.
But the way the story plays out is you doing investigations essentially and questioning people and stuff. That's another element of the game that I really like. I like that you're always on the trail of something and you're there's urgency there. That's kind of cool. And yeah, the Witcher world very specific. Like it's very unique, and
Yeah.
I think that's what gives it that staking power. And it's a cool IP for sure.
Yeah, I
And as
like.
far as
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I like this Thronebreaker thing. Like it looks like Darkest Dungeon. I played a lot of Gwent, but the fact that it also has more story in there, like I'm so curious about, yeah, just
Yeah,
what's going
the
on.
thing, like the thing about Thronebreaker and it being part of the Witcher universe, and the reason why I bring up the Witcher lore in general when talking about this singular game is because when you play this completely different genre, you still know you're in the Witcher universe. You still get that distinct sense because they give you decisions while you play. The characters behave a certain way. The dialogue feels urgent. It feels like real, like in a way that like romantic high fantasy just doesn't. And it was giving me chills. Like I'm not playing The Witcher 3. I'm not playing a mainline Witcher game, but as soon as you start playing, the language used, the way it's written, the characters, the character interactions, it's so distinctly Witcher, and it gives you goosebumps. I mean, for me anyway, like it's just written so well. Characters are intertwined in unexpected and interesting ways, and the quests surprise you. Like anyone who's familiar with a medieval fantasy game is going to be like, yeah, you go and you kill some spiders in a field and you gather their gizzards and you bring them back for some gold, and that's the way fantasy is. But in The Witcher, the quests take you by surprise, like actual surprise, something you'd never ever think about. And that experience is inspiring. Like that's something that I'm really motivated by when I play these Witcher games. For example, like for an example of something that stuck out to me is something I would never think of like designing a quest. And it's not even a quest. It's just an interaction you have. You have a decision to help or not help this guy. He's basically like, oh, I'm a farmer, but I'm sad because my cow had a calf and he was born with two heads and it's a bad omen. And I need a priest to come and like whatever, ordain the cow.
Yeah.
And you're like, how the fuck did they think of this? It's so interesting and
Yeah.
it's so random and it's completely out of nowhere, but it's totally Witcher. Like there's a lot of xenophobia in the Witcher world because of the magic, the way people have been interfacing with magic and the way it affected the world. And so to see a cow born with two heads, obviously it's weird. But it's so like unique and interesting and so unique to The Witcher. It was just cute and it was cool and it was funny and I laughed and it was just like, yeah, you cry about your cursed cow.
Right.
Like
But
that's so
maybe you
unique to
deserve
this
that
world.
cursed for being a xenophobe. A
And
xenophobic
maybe
farmer.
maybe it is an actual curse by some like weird, I don't know, who knows.
Yeah.
Like that's what's interesting about The Witcher 2 is like we know what orcs are capable of. We know what wizards do. We know what dragons do. We know what a golem does or a troll does. But like we don't know what I can't even think
How their family units operate, right?
no, but I mean like the actual species. Like
Yeah.
they're taken from like like Western European folklore, and some of this stuff like a cockatrice. Like I don't know, I couldn't tell you what that is, but it's some like chicken dragon that spits fire or something, or like the different ghosts and stuff, like different specters that are in the game. They all have specific rules and specific vulnerabilities and strengths and stuff, and learning about them through gameplay and being just as surprised to see something as the soldiers that are accompanying your squad where you're exploring the world. A drowner would be weird if you'd never seen a drowner before.
Yeah.
It's just a weird, like, humanoid thing that just steals babies at night and lives in the water.
Yeah.
And that's something you don't get from a typical fantasy. You don't get that kind of, that fantasy creature is new and cool. You don't get that anymore because we've all played World of Warcraft. We've all seen the classic high fantasy things. We know what a big spider is going to do. We know what, like, I don't know. What are, like, just a troll or whatever.
Like there's
we've
probably
seen all
not
that
going to
stuff
be
before.
any baby theft in the Elder Scrolls 6.
Well, Elder Scrolls is a little different, but yeah, it is a little closer to, I think, a Lord of the Rings high fantasy setting.
Right, but that's the point, right? Is like The Witcher is very much The Witcher.
It's The Witcher, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, playing this offshoot game, getting all those feelings and getting all that same value out of this. I paid $2 for the thing, and it is legitimately entertaining. And knowing that there's like a acclaimed story ahead of me, because I've just started playing really, but it's, like people were just praising the story, and I can already see like the groundwork is there. The writing is solid. It's really interesting, very well written. All the dialogue is cool, and characters are fun. So so much value for such a cheap game.
It's
I
$5.
could see how people. Right now. I could see how people would pass it up because it is a top-down, like, RPG style thing. You're not doing real time combat. You're playing cards.
Yeah.
But it's all there, man. And so far I've loved my time with it. It's been really interesting. I play like maybe half hour to an hour at a time, and it's The Witcher, man. I really love it. I learned to love it. Like, I'm nostalgic for it, even though I really just got into it with Witcher 3. That's just how strong the IP is.
Got me curious.
Yeah. Try it out.
Well, cool,
it's a
man.
good little taste.
Thanks for bringing Thronebreaker to the table.
Heck yeah. Yeah.
I think that might be a show. What do you think?
I think that's a good wrap. My camera's behaving at the very end, so that's good.
That is good.
I'm sad. I'm sorry that you have to edit all that stuff out.
That's all right. We'll make it work.
But let's call it a wrap. Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thanks, buddy. This has been fun.
It's been great to chat.
This has been Story Players. I'm Zach. You can find me online at ZuluZach or ZuluZachQC. That's Zach with an H. Buddy, how about yourself?
I am Winston, even though Zach's been calling me Buddy this whole time.
But
you can call me Buddy.
I called you Winston at the end of the call the other day, and you're like, Winston?
I guess you're right.
You can call yourself Winston.
I am Winston.
I'll call you Buddy.
All right, everyone knows me as Acornbringer. I'm at Acornbringer anywhere you want to find me on Twitter, on
I'll call
Instagram.
You Acorn.
No.
Acorn. Can I call you Acorn?
I can't have that. No.
Okay.
You can call me Buddy. It just, my friends call me Buddy, and Zach, you are my friend, so
cool.
It is fine.
And you're my buddy.
Yeah, but I am Winston Powell online. I'm Acornbringer online. Find me, look us up, find our stuff, whatever we've been working on. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Cool.
It's been great.
Yeah, thanks all. This has been fun. Until next time. This has been Story Players.